Good morning, everybody. We had started our discussion yesterday of Sophocles, and I pointed out to you that our course at Bar Ilan, which is usually or had been in the past 2 semesters, this classical background, is just because of the nature of things these days, we had to condense it into 1 semester, which means cutting out certain stuff. And it turns out that I had to cut out one of the plays that I really love the most. You can cut out the Iliad or the Odyssey, as you see, I think, from our studies together. Homer is both of those things and not one. And in order really to understand the tradition that he starts, and we've really been talking about Homer as beginning the Western literary tradition, you really have to read both the Iliad and the Odyssey. In my Renaissance class at the moment, we're studying As You Like It, and As You Like It is clearly, um, when Shakespeare's writing it, he's thinking a lot about the Odyssey. When people are writing comedy, they're thinking about the Odyssey, but particularly in that play, there are all sorts of ways in which Shakespeare is showing that he is kind of for himself reworking the Odyssey. And what's really great and interesting about that play is that the gender roles being so fluid in that play anyway, because of all this cross-dressing and disguise, the gender roles are reversed, and it's Rosalind, the comic female protagonist, who plays the role of Odysseus. So you can't cut out Homer, but we did cut out Aeschylus, which is a shame, because Aeschylus is the bridge between really Homer and Greek drama. As I said yesterday in class, Aeschylus is the first classic and not Homer, because it's Aeschylus that takes the Homeric inheritance and he transforms it for himself. That is, he makes it really Greek in a way that, I mean, Homer, of course, is Greek as well. Aeschylus makes it Athenian. That is, he writes a play, and we discussed the way in which the plays of Athens were part of city life, part of the ritual of city life. So Aeschylus makes Homer, and we talked about this, strangely, amazingly, Aeschylus, by introducing drama, that is, by creating the drama, and we talked about this yesterday, by introducing a second character. Sophocles will introduce a third character. He's introducing the possibility of conflict and really what we call drama. And he makes, and this is the unbelievable part, he really makes Homer seem kind of like a fairy tale, because in the world of the Odyssey, Odysseus gets home. Medon says, if Odysseus is home, the gods can't be far off. But the world that Odysseus lives in is really a one-dimensional one. You're either on Odysseus' side or you're not. You're on the side of right or not. And as we talked about already, Aeschylus complicates the story that he has inherited from Homer. So as we've already discovered, and we continue to discover, is that the Greeks are very cheerful people, you know? And that's facetious, right? And that we won't be surprised that the Oresteia begins. Now remember, we're now in the Oresteia telling another story of a homecoming. And this story of the homecoming is that of Agamemnon. We already know that Agamemnon came home very quickly. We know that from Homer, right? Aeschylus is really picking up where Homer leaves off at the beginning of book 1 of the Odyssey. And as we said last time, he gives all the characters that seem like allegorical characters. And what I mean by allegorical characters is good and evil, right? In Homer, Odysseus good, Aegisthus and Clytemnestra bad, right? Orestes, now let's just remember, Orestes is the son of Agamemnon, and he's the one we said, remember, Nestor says to Telemachus, be like Orestes. We will know that after reading Agamemnon and after reading the trilogy, there are 3 plays, Agamemnon, Libation Bearers, and Eumenides. Eumenides means kindly ones. At the end of the trilogy, known as the Oresteia, around Orestes, interestingly, around the trilogy called the Oresteia, we will no longer be able to say be like Orestes, because Agamemnon turns Orestes into a complicated character who kills and takes vengeance on his mother. And in the context of the play, unlike the context of the Odyssey, that is looked at as extremely problematic, killing your own mother, right? So let's remember, we're at the beginning of this play. Agamemnon is in Argos. Is that where this play takes place? It's in Argos. And just like in Sophocles and Oedipus Rex, all of the young people have cleared out. we have to go back to Oedipus and think about why the chorus there is just the old guys, but here it's the old guys because all the young people are dead, or either have died or are coming back from the war. So we have a watchman at the beginning, and the watchman is waiting for news that the war is over. So we're back now in the Odyssey, in Odyssey years, we're back 10 years, right? Where this is the very beginning of Odysseus's travels, but Agamemnon, as we know, comes home very speedily, but it's problematic. We were talking about the pain and suffering that we've seen in the Odyssey, and we also see in the Oresteia. First line of the play, "Dear gods, set me free from all this pain. The long watch I keep, one whole year awake, propped on my arms, crouched on the roofs of Atreus, like a dog." We're using the Fagles translation, by the way. I'll make it available to you. It's probably his best translation. And we have the beginning of the play, and the play is starting with waiting. And the waiting is waiting for the end. We're waiting for the end of the war. There is a discussion of the signal fires that will be sent out. For those of you who are familiar with the rabbinic tradition, the new month was declared by putting fires up on hills. That's exactly what's happening here. That's their fax machine, that's their means of communication. He's waiting for this end, and as he's waiting, the chorus speaks. Now let's just remember who the characters are. We know them. We didn't really talk about Atreus, the father of Menelaus and Agamemnon, but Atreus comes into this story. He doesn't appear in it, but we find out about him. What do we find out about him? Well, Atreus had a fight with his brother Thistis, and brothers fight all the time, right? Atreus has a fight with his brother Thistis. Thistis is exiled, I think, and then comes back. Atreus serves him a meal, and the meal just happens to be a meal made up of the flesh of Thistis's children. So, and this is the important part, who is Thistis's son, who is not part of the stir fry? Thistis's son, who is not part of the dinner, he was away at sleepaway camp or whatever, is our friend Aegisthus. Now, why is that important? And why is that a detail that Homer, I mean, for Homer, it's not a necessary detail because Aegisthus is just bad. But here in this play, just as we spoke about yesterday, how Clytemnestra is given a motive. She is the betrayed wife. She is the lonely wife, spending all of her time waiting for her husband to come home in Argos. Thistis, well, he's been wronged as well, right? Thistis is Clytemnestra's lover, and he has reason for revenge. The reason for revenge is Agamemnon is the son of Atreus, and he wants to take revenge for his father and his brother. So right away we see that this play is not going to fall into the simple category of, well, you're either for the good guy or against the good guy, because there really are no good guys or bad guys, where there are good guys and bad guys, or rather, somebody said yesterday in class, there are humans. There are humans who are involved in conflict. So we talked also, and this is very important for us when we're thinking about the role of the chorus. The chorus comes on the scene. Now we have this watchman guy, and he's just waiting for the end. As we'll discover in this play, everybody's waiting for the end. Everybody wants, I think the contemporary term for it is closure. Everybody wants this war to end. It's done, right? In a way, they're all occupying, and this is the brilliance of Aeschylus, they're all occupying the mindset of the Odyssey. They want their version of Odysseus to come home. They want Agamemnon to come home. When Agamemnon comes home, that's it. The story is over. That is, every character in the play is looking for a kind of closure, for an end to the story. But the problem is in Aeschylus, and again, this is the brilliance of his writing, the brilliance of his traditional writing, going back to Homer, but changing it entirely, is that there are many different stories, and all of them require a different kind of closure. So, I mean, the chorus, they're right up there with people who want everything to be already over. And this is in line, remember there are 3 plays. We're looking at Agamemnon. We'll probably just look at Agamemnon and Eumenides in this, I hope, 1-hour lecture or so. The chorus says, 10 years gone, 10 to the day, our great avenger went for Priam, Menelaus, and Lord Agamemnon, the two brothers, two kings with the power of Zeus, the twin throne, twin scepter, Atreus' sturdy yoke of sons, launched Greece in 1,000 ships. And then it goes on line 55, like vultures robbed of their young, that's the two kings, the agony sends them frenzied, soaring high from the nest. Round and round they wheel, they row their wings. It's a little bit of Achilles here. Stroke upon churning, thrashing stroke, but all the labor, the bed of pain. The young are lost forever. This is a depressing play. Yet someone hears on high, Apollo, Pan, or Zeus, the piercing wail, these guests of heaven raise and drives at the outlaws late but true to revenge, a stabbing fury. So towering Zeus, the god of guests, drives Atreus' son at Paris. Right, so that's, now we talked about the chorus. They are not simply telling us what happened. They are not the neutral narrator in a novel. There are very few neutral narrators in novels. The narrators are always, they are usually doing something. They're usually representing the action in a way. And here the chorus is clearly doing that. They're cheerleaders. They are, forgive the reference, they are Agamemnon and Menelaus's Newsmax. Trump is now tired of Fox News. He has his own news agency, Newsmax. I'm going to give you the story, and I'll leave out a few of the details, but I'm going to give it in the most allegorical form. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So here, they are like vultures, but what's important is the chorus gives their commentary in their description. That's always what description does. There's commentary in the description, yet someone hears on high. Apollo, Pan, or Zeus, the piercing wail, these guests of heaven raise and drives at the outlaws being the Trojans. Late but true to revenge, a stabbing fury. We will meet in the play, the last one, the Eumenides. We will meet the Furies, these angry older goddesses, these goddesses of revenge. So towering Zeus, the god of guests. Now that's important. Remember, Odysseus, when he comes to the Cyclops' island, says, I'm Zeus has sent me, and of course, he's the god of hospitality. The way they're telling it, so towering Zeus, the god of guests, drives Atreus' son at Paris. And it's interesting that they use the word revenge, because from their point of view, it might as well be justice, right? You have the figures of justice, Menelaus and Agamemnon. What do they do at Troy? They, following Apollo and following Zeus, bring justice. How do they do that? They kill the outlaws with their stabbing fury. They kill the outlaws. Who are they? Priam, and especially Paris, who violates the laws of hospitality. So towering Zeus, the god of guests, drives Atreus' sons at Paris. Let's take a quick break here. And we're back. There's so many great things about these plays. They're so condensed. They're so emotionally powerful. If you can't imagine Sophocles being produced, it's almost impossible to imagine this being produced properly, because there is so much energy, so much condensed energy, more than Shakespeare. It's just different than Shakespeare. So the chorus again, and here we'll see their powers of commentary. Again, line 360. Oh Zeus, and this is after the fires, and there's a lot of imagery of light. There's the lights of the fires are illuminated, and light has returned to Argos, and this whole idea that light and salvation have come. These lights, as we already can expect from the way I've been describing the plays, the lights that we see at the beginning of the play, and the watchmen and Clytemnestra, here's the watchman says, "You dawn of darkness, you turn day to night. I see the light at night today. I see the light at last. They'll be dancing in the streets of Argos." Again, so the watchman, he just wants it to be over, and he wants this light to be a sign that that the story's over, salvation, light, right? But we'll see that there are all sorts of images of light in the play, and the light that seems to be the light of salvation at the beginning of the Agamemnon is not. It doesn't define what happens. There are three plays after, and unlike the plays. We said that Sophocles writes a trilogy as well. These plays have to be read together. They have to be performed together. They have to be read together. It's one story. So here's the chorus again, line 360. O Zeus, my king and night, dear night, queen of the house who covers us with glories, you slung your net on the towers of Troy, neither young nor strong could leap the giant dread net of slavery, all embracing ruin. I adore you, iron guests, Zeus of the guests, and your revenge. You draw your longbow, year by year to a taut full draw, till one bolt, not falling short or arching over the stores, could split the mark of Paris. The sky stroke of God, it's all Troy's to tell. We're telling the story. The victors tell the story. But even I can trace it to its cause. God does as God decrees. And still, even in the 5th century, there are skeptics. And still some say that heaven would never stoop to punish men who trample the lovely grace of things untouchable. That's such beautiful poetry, right? And still some say, there are people who say that heaven would never stoop to punish men who trample the lovely grace of things untouchable. Some people say that Zeus does not punish men for destroying the world. How wrong they are. A curse burns bright on crime. Full blown, the father's crimes will blossom, burst into the sons. So there he's talking about Priam's crimes, Paris's crimes, the fire. There's just so much here. You can already hear it, I bet. A curse burns bright on crime, full blown. The father's crimes will blossom, burst into the sons. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to take out my Dr. Feldman poetry toolbox and go back to that image in line 365. I adore you, iron Zeus of the guests, and your revenge. You draw your longbow year by year to a taut full draw. This idea, I mean, what is the work that this metaphor is doing? The metaphor of the longbow drawn taut and full year by year. And what's going to follow is the assertion Zeus is involved in the affairs of men. So what work, thinking time now, I'll stop talking so quickly. What work does this metaphor do? The longbow that's being drawn year by year. I wish we had like some thinking music, like a pausing thinking music. You can think on your own. You can pause. So the assumption is, or there are some people who say that Zeus will never stoop to punish men who trample on the lovely grace of things. You might have thought, and this is the work that the metaphor is doing, you might have thought that Zeus is not involved, that he's not watching, that he's not present. So in a way, it's the same question of the Odyssey, but he's there. It's just taking him a very long time to aim. And not only aim, to provide the required force. So he pulls and pulls and pulls and pulls and pulls. And it looks like from our perspective, living in the world, that he's not there, but he is. Right? Again, that's the choruses. They're very invested in this worldview. We talked about theodicy in relationship to the Odyssey. The idea of why is there the experience of evil in the world? And here it's the same question, and the bow being drawn out is the answer to that question. You think Zeus is not involved? He's here, you just don't see him, he's aiming. Now, going back to the end of this passage, a curse burns bright on crime, full blown, the father's crimes will blossom, burst into the sons. My Norton note says, blah, blah, blah. The chorus refers to Paris, but everything it says is equally applicable to Agamemnon, because there's something else we find out about Agamemnon. Agamemnon is stuck in Troy. I don't know if we know this from the Odyssey. He's stuck in Troy. He's pissed off one of the goddesses. I think it's Artemis. You guys can correct me. And he cannot leave. So, but there's a condition to his leaving. Let me just find this. I'll pause for a second. So everybody has skeletons in their closet, and Agamemnon no less. This is even earlier. Agamemnon is stuck in Troy, and the goddess gives him a choice. Either sacrifice your daughter or stay here. And here, Aeschylus dramatizes a conflict on the basis of gender and some other things involved as well. Here, Agamemnon has to choose between saving his fellows, the older warlords who are pushing him on to sacrifice his daughter, or to be faithful to his daughter. It's not only gender, the masculine and the feminine, but it is also kinds of relationships. Does Agamemnon follow the social, that is, respect the relationships he has with his comrades, with his fellow warlords, with the men of Troy? Or does he follow his filial attachment, his daughter, right? And we'll see throughout these plays that there is a conflict between the masculine and the feminine, but also between the masculine as the social and the feminine as the familial. And what I mean by the familial is fathers, sons, fathers, daughters, mothers, sons. The social spreads out this way, right? Masculine. The filial, right? Father, son, father, daughter, mother, son, goes this way. Women in the Oresteia, in all three of the plays, they go after the filial. The men, and this is Agamemnon's mistake here, that's the way he gets home, is Agamemnon sacrifices the filial, sacrifices his daughter for the social. And here the chorus is, I think, remembering it. Obey, obey, or a heavy doom will crush me. Oh, but doom will crush me. This is line 205. Once I rend my child, the glory of my house. A father's hands are stained. Blood of a young girl streaks the altar. This is Agamemnon considering what should he do. Follow his family, follow his friends. And here's something that we get in Aeschylus. It's repeated 2 or 3 times, which we never get in the Odyssey. This is line 212. Pain both ways, and what is worse? Pain both ways. In the Odyssey, there's pain for those who don't follow Odysseus, glory for those who do. In our play, and again, this is the way in which Aeschylus is complicating the model that we've inherited from Homer, there's no simple path. And this goes back to what we were saying in class yesterday. In the realm of the human, there will always be pain. It's not just Odysseus's pain in becoming himself, and the pain of the suitor suffering at his sword, and that of Telemachus. It's the pain of the complexities of life. So going back to the speech of the chorus on line 378, a curse burns bright on crimes, full blown, the father's crimes will blossom, burst into the sons. So, of course, as our Norton note points out to us, the chorus is referring to the sins of Priam on and influencing his son, but we read it and we know it when we read it as the sins of the father Agamemnon, which will be visited on his son Orestes. So there's all sorts of opportunities also for double meanings and ironies of which the characters are not aware. They're not aware of the meanings of their own words. That happens in Sophocles and Oedipus Rex as well. We say something and we don't know that they have double meanings. I mean, we know because we know the story. So that's the backstory for Agamemnon. And we find out a little bit more about Clytemnestra as well. She ain't Penelope. Even though she tries to have us think of her as Penelope, she says at a certain time, there's all sorts of signals to the Odyssey, meaning asking the reader to look at this, or the person who's watching the play, to see this action through the lens of the Odyssey. But we see this action through the lens of the Odyssey only to find out that that lens is totally insufficient to what we're seeing. Clytemnestra says on line 593, now for the best way to welcome home my lord, my good lord. Sounds like the Odyssey. No time to lose, what dawn, there's the light again, can feast a woman's eyes like this. I can see the light. The husband plucked from war by the saving God and open wide the gates. Tell him that and come and have him come home with speed. The people's darling, how they long for him and for his wife. May he return, this is line 600, and find her true at hall. The quietness of the true to the true at hall. It sounds like Penelope, right? And for his wife, may he return and find her true at hall, just as the day he left her, faithful to the last. And then it gets a little more complicated. My nominee for Clytemnestra is Meryl Streep, and a little early, not her current age, but in order to play this part, you have to be a great, great actress. So watch this. So this is line 603. A watchdog gentle to him alone. And then she glances towards the palace. Savage, one word on one line, to those who cross his path. We would tell our Meryl Streep with that one word line, savage, to say it and to say it with savagery and to pause. And a close up on her face, we see it in our movie in our head, to those who cross his path. When we read the rest of the line, savage to those who cross his path, oh, it sounds fine, right? She's protecting her husband. But the one word line is giving us the direction and giving the actress the direction. This is defining who you are. Take that moment, savage. We see you. That's who you are. You are savage. But Clytemnestra, and again, she's playing her own game. And we find out more about her and her humanity, which is real. Line 843. Old nobility of Argos, gathered here, I am not ashamed to tell you how I love the men. I am older and the fear dies away. I am human. She sure is, right? Nothing I say was learned from others. This is my life, my ordeal. Long as a siege, right? She's defining herself the same way Odysseus does. This is my life, my ordeal, my life, my pain. Long as the siege he laid at Troy, and more demanding. First, when a woman sits at home and the man is gone, the loneliness is terrible, unconscionable, and the rumors spread and fester. A runner comes with something dreadful close on his heels, the next in his news worse, and they shout it out and the whole house can hear. And wounds, if he took one wound for each report to penetrate these walls, he's gashed like a dragnet. More. If he had only died, for each death that swelled his record, he could boast like a triple-bodied Gurion risen from the grave. Check the note. 3 shrouds I dug from the earth, one for every body that went down. She's mourned him over and over again because of all the rumors. The rumors broke like fever, broke and then rose higher. There were times they cut me down and eased my throat from the noose. I wavered between the living and the dead. Turning to Agamemnon, and so our child is gone, not standing by our side, the bond of our dearest pledges, mine and yours. By all rights, our child should be here. Note the pause. Orestes. What does the pause do? What's Clytemnestra's game here? One more time. Our child is gone, not standing by our side. The bond of our dear pledges, mine and yours. By all rights, our child should be here. Orestes. What's going through Agamemnon's mind in that pause? Our child should be here. Orestes, he's thinking of his daughter, the one he killed. Her name is Iphigenia. But Clytemnestra gives him that opportunity, right? And this is just a great dramatic moment. What is Agamemnon thinking now? What does she know? What is she thinking? She says at some point, roll out the red carpet. And I'm sure it's better in Greek, but the red carpet is, in this case, the bloody carpet that she's going to roll out for him when she kills him. Oh, here, this is line 903. Quickly let the red stream flow and bear him home to the home he never hoped to see. Justice, lead him in. This is really the greatest work in Western literature. I mean, aside from Homer and Shakespeare, because we're seeing also that Aeschylus is thinking about. He already mentioned revenge. The chorus does. What's the difference between revenge and justice? Some people would say there is no difference, that revenge or justice is just revenge laid out in a way which is socially acceptable. We'll have to talk more about that. But here she says, justice leads him home. Clytemnestra continues, this is line 1000, justice comes to birth. There's another feminine in this play. Her name is Cassandra. She is referred to by Clytemnestra as one of the golden girls of Troy, one of the women with whom Agamemnon was having an affair, fooling around, whatever. And she has a particular gift, which is also a curse. She knows the future, but can't explain it to anybody. She knows what the future will bring, and she has this very, very long speech in which she tells what will happen, but in a way in which nobody can understand. I call it the Cassandra complex. Do you know people like this? People who are able to, they know what the future will be, but because of the way that they express themselves, they're not understood. So Cassandra knows that she will die, that Agamemnon will die. This is the scene right before Clytemnestra takes them off the stage, and her and Aegisthus brutally murder them. In Greek tragedy, and this will be true of Oedipus Rex as well, we never get to see the gory scenes. They're always described. Language takes precedence over spectacle, not like our culture. Language takes precedence over spectacle. It's described. And we do have this scene that gets opened. The stage opens up at the end of the play. We see Clytemnestra, really like a man, and at this end, Aeschylus emphasizes this. She's referred to by Cassandra as a bull, which is a male animal, right? She's like a man with her bloodied sword, Aegisthus next to her, standing over in this giant cauldron, Agamemnon and Cassandra, who are bleeding and dead. It's a very, very powerful image. And we'll just mention here that in the central play, The Libation Bearers, the play ends. Orestes comes home, finds his mother, finds Aegisthus. Off stage, he kills Aegisthus and his mother, not before Clytemnestra, just like Hecuba. And the Iliad says, remember my breast. It's this great Homeric moment. And of course, Clytemnestra is no Hecuba. It's kind of a joke because she's such a violent character. Justifiably violent, but still a different kind of feminine than what we're used to, not the nurturing Hecuba, not the domestic figure. We'll see another character like Clytemnestra, really rebelling against domesticity. That will be in the next play, which we will read together in class, Euripides' Medea, in which the feminine takes on the role of the masculine. So the scene in Libation Bearers is exactly the same as we see at the end of Agamemnon. That is the image of the murderer, the one seeking justice. Orestes also thinks he's seeking justice. He's taking revenge for his father. His mother killed his father. He's taking revenge for his father. He's taking revenge for the masculine. And Clytemnestra, she, of course, and we talked about this earlier, she is taking revenge for her daughter. Remember, women go after the family bond. Men go after the social bond. Marriage, very important. Marriage is not a family bond. I mean, it is, but it's primarily a social bond. It's a horizontal bond, not a vertical bond. Again, the men, Agamemnon, with his friends on the shores of Troy, as he's ready to go home. Orestes is defending the institution of marriage and his father. Clytemnestra kills Agamemnon because he killed their daughter. Women, family; men, the social. But at the end of, going back to what we were saying, we're still at the end of Agamemnon, we're flash forwarding to the end of Libation Bearers, where we have the same scene repeated. I think Aeschylus even hits us over the head and says, it's just the same as you saw with Agamemnon, which is to suggest that whatever violence we're seeing at the end of Agamemnon, and remember, Clytemnestra says, justice comes to birth. When justice comes to birth, it suggests that there's an ending, right? Just like the herald, I can see the end. Cassandra, by the way, the prophetess who can't be believed or is not believed, she says, I cannot see the end. All the other characters in the play are saying, the end is here, the end is here, the end is here. Clytemnestra celebrates at the end of Agamemnon and says, a masterpiece of justice. But the scene at the end of Libation Bearers, where we see the same thing repeated, and Orestes will make the same kinds of arguments. It's the end now, it's final, there's finally justice. We see these competing claims of justice. One of the most powerful lines in one of the most powerful lines in the play, the chorus at the end of Agamemnon, they know things are not working out the way they wanted. They wanted an ending. And they say, each charge meets countercharge. None can judge between them. And then there's the one word sentence, justice. And in a way, after the Odyssey, where justice is defined as Odysseus coming home and that's it, here we have each charge meets countercharge. None can judge them, justice. And that justice is almost coming with a question mark. What is it? And especially after we read the second play and we see Orestes triumphant over his mother. Is that justice? Where is justice? It seems rather than justice, there's simply a cycle of revenge. But at the end of Agamemnon, Clytemnestra is triumphant. And she says, finally, revealing herself, words, endless words I've said to serve the moment. Now it makes me proud to tell the truth. How else to prepare a death for deadly men who seem to love you? We're in a whole different world here, right? Of deceit, of lying. How to rig the nets of pain so high, no man can overleap them. That's line 1400. Line 1425, about Agamemnon, 1420. So it stands, elders of Argos gathered here. Rejoice, if you can rejoice. I glory. And if I pour upon his body the libation, or a libation is a liquid offering, it deserves, what wine could match my words? It is right and more than right. He flooded the vessel of our proud house with misery, with the vintage of the curse, and now he drains the dregs. My Lord is home at last. What a homecoming, right? What a different homecoming from that of the Odyssey. Even though Aeschylus is writing hundreds of years later, he gives us a sense of what the difference is between Agamemnon's homecoming and that of Odysseus. And just like Clytemnestra says that she's rigging the nets. So, and remember before the chorus talks, before in the very beginning of the play, the chorus talks about the one who rigs the nets. It's not a person, it's Zeus. And that metaphor is being borrowed here by Clytemnestra, and then in 1639 by Aegisthus. So you see him down, and I, the weaver of justice, plotted out the kill. Skipping down to 1646, now I could die gladly. Even I see this monster in the nets of justice. Aegisthus again thinks of himself as the weaver of justice. I plot a very important word here, plotted out the kill. Now I could die gladly. Even now I see this monster in the nets of justice. Why does Aegisthus, or why does Aeschylus have Aegisthus employing the same metaphor that the chorus used before to describe Zeus? From the chorus's point of view, and they still live in that old world of the Odyssey, Zeus uses the nets of justice. And the nets of justice come over Paris and Priam, those outlaws. And in their mind, it still is the world of the Odyssey, good guys and bad guys. By the end of the play, it's not Zeus, but it's Aegisthus and Clytemnestra. Not only is it not the gods and people, but it's the people who in Homer had the least claims for justice, had no claims for justice. Yet here at the end of Agamemnon, we find Clytemnestra and Aegisthus arguing for justice. And aren't they right? They've both been wronged. Wronged in ways which we never knew in the Odyssey. So is what they pursue justice? Is what Orestes will pursue at the end of Libation Bearers, when he goes back to his home and he finds his mother? His mother offers out his breast and her breast in a gesture of maternalism, of sustenance, of domesticity, and he kills her and he kills Aegisthus. Isn't that justice? Really, those two plays, and we'll skip in the next installment of this, right to the last play, Eumenides, where Orestes goes on trial, basically, because he killed his mother. But we have these competing claims of justice. So what do you do when you have competing claims of justice? When you have, as Aeschylus puts it here, when you have competing plots, you have different plots and plotters. Is that revenge or is that justice? There's a book by a political scientist at Notre Dame in America named Alistair McIntyre. He wrote a book called Whose Justice? Meaning, and the title of the book is asking the question, I mean, the title of the book almost is undermining the whole concept of justice, because when I say whose justice, I mean, I think of justice as something more universal. Justice is for everybody. But when I say whose justice, justice seems to be translated into revenge. So the question for Athenians who are watching this play, who are sitting in Athens, in this theater, is they're wondering, as they watch these first two plays, how does justice emerge from vengeance? Or how does justice emerge from different equally valuable or viable conceptions of what justice is? Clytemnestra and Aegisthus are acting justly. Agamemnon is acting, well, when he killed his daughter, does he act justly? When Orestes kills his mother, does he act justly? It really does seem like a kind of cycle of revenge, 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 revenge. We mentioned where the chorus speaks impersonally about fury. We meet, or we will meet, the Furies. These are these older goddesses. They're much older than the Olympian gods. And their job in life is, they are the goddesses of vengeance. What their job is to take vengeance on people who have no one to take vengeance for them. Who might that be? Who has no one to take vengeance for her? Who has no one to defend her against her son? Clytemnestra. So at the beginning of Eumenides, and we'll do another installment next week, I guess, on this. At the beginning of Eumenides, we see Clytemnestra seeking out justice. And the only one she can rely upon are the Furies. And they're not accidentally. The Furies are an older force, but a feminine force who comes to the rescue of Apollo, who comes to the rescue of Orestes, the younger Olympian god, the masculine god, Apollo. Orestes, the masculine, the social, Clytemnestra, the feminine, the family. Aeschylus builds up the conflicts. So they're not just the conflicts between people, as we see in Agamemnon, but by the time we get to the Eumenides, which means the kindly ones, the Furies turn into the kindly ones by the end of the play. We'll talk about that. By the time we get to the Eumenides, there's not only a conflict between people, it's like the end of the Odyssey. It's like the beginning of the Iliad. It's a cosmological fight. Remember when Hera and Zeus get involved in the fight between Agamemnon and Achilles? So that's the same thing that happens, really. The Fagles, the translator, said that the Oresteia starts out as the Iliad and then turns into the Odyssey and then turns into something completely different. And we're at the stage now where it's turning something like into the Odyssey, that there's the possibility, we have to see if there's some kind of possibility of resolution. What is home for Aeschylus? Home for Odysseus is Ithaca on the island. Home for Aeschylus, a little bit different. Home for Aeschylus is the city. It's Athens. That was fun. Talk to you soon. We'll do this again. We'll do the humanities. You see how important this is, right?